Welcome to part 4 of Competency 1. In this video, we will work with properties of absolute value. Before we begin, we need to note that the calculator used for this particular exam, the 115 TExES Mathematics for 4 to 8 middle school, it will not have an absolute value button or option anywhere on the calculator. This means we need to know our absolute value properties. Not a big deal. Just stop the video, refamiliarize yourself with these items, or as we go, we'll quickly state what some of these details are. Okay? All right, let's look at number 1. Which expression is not equivalent to 1 minus 4? Okay, in absolute value, and then we have a 5 after it. Well, that really means that we're going to take that absolute value. Oh, well, here, let me do this. That's not very good. We're going to take that absolute value and then, okay, that's not working it out for me very well. We'll take the absolute value and we're really multiplying by 5, okay? So when we look at A, is that going to give us what we want? All right. Remember, we're looking for what is not equivalent. So if it's equivalent, it's not what we need. Okay. All right. So type in, noting that. Type in what you see, but noting that we have absolute value on the outside. That means whatever we get, we just simply take the positive if we get a negative. All right. So let's type it in the way we see it. Parentheses 5, close parentheses. And then just put your 1 exactly the way you see it, minus parentheses 5, close parentheses 4. Now push enter. Okay, it's negative, so we simply make it positive. Okay, well, is that what our given would have been? Actually, yes, because 1 minus 4 is negative 3. Well, absolute value makes it 3 times that 5 gives us the 15, okay? Well, that means A is not what we want. So now let's look at B. Again, in absolute value, let's type it in exactly the way we see it, okay? 5 parentheses 1 minus 4 close. Push enter. Again, we simply take the positive because the typed in answer is negative. Remember, we don't have absolute value. That's what I'm doing. I type in what they gave me, then I deal with the absolute value in those cases. So that means B is not what I want, okay? Because that actually equals 15, like the given. Okay, so let's look at C. Well, actually, C is the same thing as the given. The only difference is they took the 5 and they moved it to the front. So mark that out. This means we hope that D is the correct option. Okay? Well, 5 times 1 is 5. It doesn't matter in this case because it's positive and all absolute values are positive. See, so that would just be 5. So this would just be 5. And then we're going to subtract. Well, the absolute value of 4 times 5, which is 20, is again just 20. But what does that actually equal? Okay, that is 5 minus 20, which is negative 15. The difference is we do not have another absolute value over the entire expression. This 5 minus 20, those have already been taken out of the absolute value. Therefore, D is the correct option because it does actually equal negative 15. Now, if we had another set of absolute values around all of the option for D, then that would not be the case. But in this case, D is not equivalent to the given. Okay. All right, let's move on to number 2. Number 2, which one of the following is true about the equation? Absolute value of 5 minus 6 plus 13 equal to 5 plus absolute value of 6, negative 6 plus 13. Okay, if we look at our A, B, C, D options, we will see that A is asking if it's true, B is saying the statement is false, C says true, and D says false. Well, this tells me right away, before I even thoroughly read the options, that I need to see if this statement is actually true or not. Okay? They're testing your ability to quickly see absolute value. Okay? So if we look at the first one, well, if we put in 5 minus 6, that's negative 1. But we know the absolute value of anything negative has to be the positive. So what do we really have here on the left-hand side? We have 1 plus 13. Well, that gives us 14. So on the left-hand side, we have 14. Well, let's see if that's actually equal to the right-hand side, okay? But look at the absolute value first. So what we have is, in the absolute value, we have negative 6 plus the 13. Well, that's 7. But the absolute value of a positive number is still the positive number. So what do we really have? We have 5 plus 7 equals 12. Well, that's not going to be equal to 14. Okay, so this here, let me write this better. This tells me that our statement is false in the first place. Well, that gets rid of option A, and that gets rid of option C. Now let's look at B. The statement is false because the left-hand side equals 14 and the right-hand side equals 12. Well, I agree with that, and I'll circle it, but we need to look at D. The statement is false because the left-hand side is 12 and the right-hand side is 14. They have switched them, transposed, so D obviously is not correct either. So B is our option. Okay, let's look at number 3, and it says, what is the value of the following expression? Okay, so what we need to do is everything here can be typed in the way it is, except for our absolute value. Because as we stated before, our absolute value, it doesn't exist on this particular calculator or family of calculators. You'd have to get a different, a higher level of calculator. Of course, on the TI-84, it has absolute value. But for us, this is what we can do. Well, we know that absolute value means if it's negative, then we have positive. Well, just use parentheses and type in 5. Easily solved. Now, when I'm taking a test, I type in what is written, what I have on my paper exactly that way. I don't try to change anything because you're testing, just to be safe. And let's follow our order of operations also. Okay, so you have parentheses, negative 6 plus 2, close the parentheses, minus parentheses 5 parentheses. I know that seems silly. Do it anyway because you're trying to pass a test. You're not trying to be a genius. I wouldn't try. I don't care how many degrees you have. Type in what you see, push enter, and the value is negative 10. I know so many people will tell me, or even my students say, but we can do that in our heads. Well, you shouldn't on a test. You get stressed, you get tired, your eyeballs start crossing. It's just better to type in what you see. Okay, now so let's go to number 4. What is the value of the following expression? Okay, well, we have to deal with our absolute values again. Well, I would deal with the first one, and it says negative 3. Remember, negative becomes positive. So what do we really have? Well, I would replace that with parentheses, okay? I would replace that with parentheses and make it positive 3 over the 5. And of course, that's times 2. I'm going to go ahead and type it in as is, and then plus. Now, I know you see again that you think that might be silly to do the parentheses, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to take my absolute value. My -2 is positive, and I'm going to put in the 2. Now, you might have looked at that and said, well, whenever you square something, it makes it positive no matter what. Well, just going to do what's there. It's all good, you know? So now I have a negative in parentheses, 2/3, and then minus the 3. Now I have something that I can type in exactly the way I see it, okay? I use the parentheses just to be safe, to replace the absolute value, okay? Once I deal with the actual absolute value. Okay, so open your parentheses, go to fraction, and I have 3/5, arrow all the way over, close my parentheses, times 2, and then plus parentheses 2, close parentheses, square root. I mean, not square root, excuse me, squaring. But I was going to comment, I know that looks silly because 2 in parentheses to the second power is the same as 2 to the second power. But regardless, I'm going to type it in the way we see it. Okay, then I have minus a parentheses, fraction, then 2, 3. Oh, see what I did? Just arrow back, push delete. Now go all the way out, close your parentheses. It's not the end of the world when you type something wrong. You can usually fix it. And then -3. Okay, now let's push enter and see what happens. And that is a positive 23/15, option D. Okay, great. All right, let's go to number 5. Number 5, a particle travels a linear path. The particle travels 12 centimeters, travels backward 5 centimeters, then turns forward and travels 3 centimeters. Which of the following expressions represents the total distance the particle it has traveled? Okay, this is just trying to trip us up with English, okay, the language of it. Okay, so we have plus the 12, so he's going along forward. But then backwards, we could say -5. But that's an absolute value because it's distance. He's traveling a total distance. Then turns forward. So they're trying to imply a plus. So I'm thinking we have plus 12 plus the absolute value of -5 and then plus 3. Well, B satisfies that because it says total distance. Distance is different. It's always an absolute value. Because I'm traveling backwards doesn't mean that I subtract it off. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, let's put it in our calculator because we know this is a +5 because it's just distance. Okay, so 12 plus 5 plus a 3, 20 centimeters. So I agree with that. However, A, I'm going to have to disagree with because 12 minus the 5, well, we can't subtract off distance unless they tell us it's less a certain distance, but that's not what they're saying. So that would be 10. So I disagree with that. And let's look at C. C is the same as A. It's just absolute value in disguise. So that would still be 10. So I disagree with that. So now let's look at D. 12 minus 5 is 7. Well, the absolute value of anything positive is still going to be the positive, and that's just +3. So that would be 10. So I'm going to disagree with D and go with B. All right, now let's look at 6. A scuba diver reaches a depth of 318.25 meters. So that's a depth, but I'm going to say, even though it's a depth below sea level, it would be minus a negative 318.25. Okay, I agree with that. However, what are we really talking about here? And a hiker reaches a summit of Mount Everest at 8,840 meters. Okay, that's a plus. He's going up, whereas the diver goes down. What is the expression in solution that represents the difference in distance between the depth of the scuba diver and the hiker? Represents the difference in distance. So they don't mean how far are they apart. They're like, who's gone further, maybe, or what's the difference? So what we really have is we are taking the 884 and subtracting the absolute value of the diver. So let's see here. Well, this is a negative. Well, A can't be right because distance isn't negative. B, well, they are taking a negative distance and subtract or adding on another negative and making absolute value. Well, B represents, in all honesty, I disagree with B because of this negative here. I don't like the way it's written. It doesn't represent the situation correctly. And what it gives us is the total distance from the hiker to where the diver is at that point. Well, that doesn't represent what they asked. They said difference in distance, not the same thing. So let's see. C says take the absolute value of the diver and subtract off the height of the hiker. Actually, that doesn't make sense. And it gives us a negative value. So I disagree with C. So let's look at D. You have the height of the hiker minus the negative depth of the diver. That makes sense. So we're going to subtract the distance of the diver with its absolute value from the total of the hiker. So D is the answer. That is the true difference in distance of the two, because the hiker is further from sea level. Okay? All right, you have to kind of think that out. It's like this would be the distance of the hiker, this would be the distance of the diver, and this little area is what we're looking for, which represents the value that D has. Okay, let's look at number 7. Let's see what we have here. All right, which of the following statements about the expression is true? Well, let's see what we have. We have the absolute value of x minus 9 over 4 plus 2 equals 4. Okay, so they're saying probably, we're going to look at ABCD options, but they're saying what values of x could satisfy this? Well, I bet there's more than one. So let's take a look here, and then we'll pop it in our calculator and see if we're right. A says it is true that x equals 1 and x equals 17 because the absolute value 1 minus 9 is 8 and 17 minus 9 is 8. I kind of believe that, but how do we find out? Well, we put it in the calculator. Well, 1 minus 9 equals negative 8, but the absolute value is 8. And that makes sense, but we have to put that in the calculator the way we see it. So we put in our fraction and we say 1 minus 9, and then our denominator is 4, arrow over, plus 2, and then we push equal. Oh, goodness, let's see here. Absolute. Oh, that's absolute value. I did that wrong. Let's do that again. I should put in. Did you see what I did? I went up and I captured it. See how you can arrow up and down? But here I punched that in the way it was. It should have been 8. Because remember, our calculator does not have the ability to give us that absolute value. Now let's push enter. And it's 4. Okay, there we go. And 17 minus 9 is also equal to 8. Therefore, this would be true. Let's see. B says it's false because the absolute value of negative 9, 1 minus 9, I'm sorry, 1 minus 9 does not equal 8. Well, that's not true. We just verified that by what we did above. If it didn't equal 8, it would have equaled 0. So we've already proven that. Even though I entered the wrong thing to begin with, I've proven that B is incorrect. So I disagree with B. Let's look at C. It is true that X is only equal to 1 because the absolute value 1 minus 9 equals 8. That's not true because the absolute value of 17 minus 9 also equals 8. And we've already entered the expression in the calculator with both 1 and 17. Well, we didn't try 17, but it doesn't matter because we know it's 8. And we did 8 over 4 plus 2 equals 4. So I disagree with C and D because they're saying that the absolute value of 1 minus 9 is the only one, and then D says 17 is the only one. So I disagree with both those. A is the only logical and complete answer. That's what we're looking for, the complete answer here. I'll get rid of these, and that's our only option. Okay. All right, we've used our calculator to show it. Unfortunately, we have to know what to do with absolute value because our calculator isn't going to tell us in this case. Okay, this is the last question in this particular video. I want to thank everyone for watching and subscribing, liking, and sharing us. You guys are so awesome. We've gotten great responses. We're going to keep making videos for you. And happy testing, everyone.